What if I told you about a guy who had over 12,000 career points, almost 2,000 career blocks, was an NBA All-Star, a 3-time All-Defensive Team selection, and one of the most versatile defenders the league has ever seen? Just disappeared one day. That's what happened to our guy, AK-47. One day, he was one of the most unique players impacting the game in ways that most players couldn't. And the next, he kind of faded away and is barely even talked about. But how did this even happen? Where did he go? And where is he now? Well, to figure this out, we have to go back to the beginning where this whole thing started. Andrei Kirilenko was born on February 18, 1981, in Izhevsk, a city in the Soviet Union, now part of Russia. From a young age, he showed an interest in basketball, a sport that wasn't as dominant in Russia as like hockey or soccer. Unlike many players who developed their skills over time, Kirilenko's rise was rapid. He picked up the game at 10 years old, and within a few years, he was already competing at a high level. His combination of height, agility, and natural instincts made him stand out, and it was clear he had the potential to go far. By the time he was just 15 years old, Kirilenko made history. He became the youngest player to ever compete in the Russian Basketball Super League, the country's top professional league. And for context, most teenagers at this age are still figuring out the basics of the game. But for Kirilenko, he was already holding his own against fully grown men.
Yeah, 15.
15.
15. I was like about a week before 16 years old, so it was 15 technically. But at that time, like when you're 15 years old, the senior team asked me, okay, we want you to join the roster for this game. You're going to be participating, and you feel like, oh my God,
right?
Jesus Christ, I'm like a high schooler going to play against guys with like 30, 35 years old. Like, my mom was worried. She was like, oh my God, they're going to rip you apart.
His raw athleticism, combined with an exceptional defensive mindset, made him a valuable asset early in his career. Coaches quickly realized that he had the ability to impact games on both ends of the floor, even though he was still developing his offensive skills. Kirilenko's early success caught the attention of top clubs as soon as he was playing for Spartak St. Petersburg. While his time there was brief, it was a stepping stone to something much bigger. In 1998, at just 17 years old, he signed with CSKA Moscow, Russia's most prestigious basketball club. CSKA had a reputation for developing elite talent, and joining them meant Kirilenko would be competing against the best players in Europe. It didn't take long for him to make an impact. In his very first season with CSKA, he played a key role, helping them win the Russian Super League championship. While he wasn't the main offensive weapon, his defensive versatility, rebounding, and shot blocking were game changers. His length and athleticism made him a nightmare for opposing teams, and his ability to guard multiple positions set him apart. By 1999, he was already making waves internationally. That year, he led Russia to a strong performance in the FIBA Under-19 World Cup, earning MVP honors in the process. His performance wasn't just about scoring. He dominated in rebounds, steals, and blocks, proving that he could be an all-around force on the court. The following year, Kirilenko took his game to another level. He was named Russian League MVP in 2000, a huge accomplishment for a player who was still a teenager, by the way. That same season, CSKA of Moscow won the North European League Basketball Championship, adding another title to his growing list of achievements. While he was still dominating in Russia, scouts from the NBA had taken notice. His unique skill set, a combination of size, defensive instincts, and versatility, made him a highly intriguing prospect. In the 1999 NBA draft, the Utah Jazz selected Andrei Kirilenko with the 24th overall pick, making him the first Russian player ever chosen in the first round. At the time, he was just 18 years old, and while many expected him to jump straight to the NBA, the Jazz and Kirilenko agreed that he needed more time to develop. Unlike many American prospects who play college basketball before entering the league, European players often stay overseas for a few years to refine their skills. It's a reason that the past couple of years, the NBA has mostly been dominated by European players. Instead of immediately joining Utah, Kirilenko remained in Europe for 2 more seasons. This proved to be a smart move, as he continued to gain experience against top competition. In the 2000-2001 Super League, he finished in the top 10 of nearly every major statistical category, solidifying his status as one of the best young players in the world. During this period, he also had a brief stint with Partizan Belgrade, a Siberian club with a strong basketball tradition. While his time there was short-lived, it gave him valuable exposure to a different style of play, further adding to his development. By 2001, it was clear that Kirilenko was ready for the next challenge. After dominating in Russia and proving himself on the international stage, he signed a contract with the Utah Jazz, finally making the jump to the NBA.
As I said, I had an agent. He was like doing the whole communication with the Jazz, and he was kind of keep me posted like what's going on. But because I had a contract, there's not much you can do. Obviously you link to the Moscow, and by that time I was playing well, so team was like trying to keep fighting to keep me with the team. And when my contract was over, so as soon as possible I was like packed, ready to go.
His experience in European basketball had prepared him well. He had played against tough competition, learned how to adapt his game, and gained the confidence needed to compete at the highest level. When Andrei Kirilenko finally made his NBA debut with the Utah Jazz, expectations weren't sky high. He was a young international player stepping into a league that often took time to adjust overseas talent. However, Kirilenko didn't waste any time proving he belonged. The Jazz, still led by the legendary duo of John Stockton and Karl Malone, were a veteran-heavy team, and Kirilenko had to earn his minutes.
He was a hard coach. Like everything Jazz do at that point was a system. You have to be a part of the system. You have to be that wheel cog. How you say it? Like cog?
Yeah.
Like the piece of the mechanism. We run those drills until you like fell down. You know exactly what you're supposed to do at a certain point. When you play the game, I knew every minute when the substitution is coming.
Already.
And for me, like, it was so crazy because I was like, man, it's like we're playing different teams, different leader, different scenario of the game. Like, how come we have a substitution this particular
same
minute?
time every
It's
game.
like you have to change it. You have to like fix your system, like for the different opponents. Like, my way or highway.
In his rookie season, he primarily came off the bench, but even in limited playing time, his impact was impossible to ignore. His defensive instincts, shot blocking ability, and relentless hustle immediately stood out. He wasn't just another young player trying to find his place. He was actively making winning plays, whether it was protecting the rim, stealing passes, or grabbing tough rebounds. Kirilenko finished his first NBA season, averaging 11 points, 5 rebounds, almost 2 steals, and almost 2 blocks per game. His defensive presence alone made him one of the most valuable young players in the league. And by the end of the season, he had secured a place on the NBA All-Rookie First Team. Unlike many rookies who struggle with consistency, Kirilenko played with an energy that never wavered. His ability to guard multiple positions and disrupt offenses made him a key player off the bench. And before long, he was starting games for the Jazz. As Stockton and Malone neared the end of their careers, Utah was preparing for a transition. They needed a new face of the franchise, someone who could lead them into the future. Kirilenko wasn't the most traditional choice. He wasn't an elite scorer, and his game revolved around defense and versatility rather than pure offensive skills. But his all-around impact made him a natural candidate to take on a bigger role.
My feeling that time was like, it's going to be a tough season because we just lost the two guys who was the face of the franchise.
Right.
And I didn't really think that, it's my time. I have to pick up the team. I think you still feel like you're a young kid, you have to put a little bit more to the plate. But I don't think I had the feeling that, it's my team. I'm the big man right now.
Right.
Probably I never been in this kind of set of mind. I always been more like a friendly team player. I wanted, you wanted to be around rather than, give me the ball and get out of the way.
By the 2003-2004 season, the Jazz were entering a new era. Stockton had retired and Malone went ring chasing with the Lakers. This left Utah with a massive void, and Kirilenko was expected to step up, and he didn't disappoint. With a much larger role, Kirilenko's numbers saw a significant jump. He finished the season, averaging almost 17 points, 8 rebounds, 2 blocks, and almost 2 steals per game. His ability to impact every aspect of the game was almost unheard of. He was the only player in the NBA who ranked in the top 5 in both blocks and steals, a feat that had only been achieved just once before by David Robinson in the early 90s.
I wouldn't limit it myself to the defense only, just because when I start playing basketball, I kind of equally try to play defense and then give your best in offense. Mm-hmm. And I think when I joined the NBA, and I think this is the best thing I learned about NBA and actually American basketball. Mm-hmm. And actually it's not only basketball, it's very typical for the different occupation or different discipline as well. In US, when you do something, you become a professional, very good in this particular, let's say, discipline or, direction. If you're a shooter, you're a shooter. If you're a ball handler, you're a great ball handler.
Right.
And you kind of specialize on this.
Yeah,
if you are, computer programmist, you're so good at it. Mm-hmm. In Russia, people get used know a lot of things, but not so good at this particular thing.
Right. Yeah.
So we know everything, but really nothing in this category. In US, you are very good in a certain category, but when it comes to something else, you're like, you know what? I have no idea what it is.
Right. Yeah.
So I think it's mentality and culture. And when we learn as a kids, we really concentrate on fundamentals. We concentrate on the team game. We concentrate offense and defense, both equally important.
His defensive impact was so immense that opposing teams had to adjust their game plan just to avoid him. Kirilenko had a rare gift of being able to protect the rim while also being quick enough to guard perimeter players. He was everywhere blocking shots, intercepting passes, diving for loose balls, and making the hustle plays that didn't always show up in the stat sheets. That season, Kirilenko was named to the NBA All-Star team, a well-deserved recognition of his incredible two-way play. And Utah, despite being in a rebuilding phase, remained competitive, largely because of Kirilenko's all-around dominance. He wasn't just a defender. He was scoring efficiently, grabbing rebounds, and even showing signs of being a solid playmaker. With his elite defense, versatility, and nonstop motor, Kirilenko had officially established himself as the Jazz's new franchise player. But as he was about to find out, maintaining that status would be far from easy. The 2004-2005 season was a defining moment for Kirilenko. He took his defensive game to an even higher level, leading the entire NBA in block shots with 3.3 per game. What made it even more impressive, though, is that Kirilenko wasn't a traditional center. In fact, he wasn't a center at all. He was playing small forward and often defending quicker players while still protecting the rim better than most bigs in the league. That in itself is insane.
Well, what I can say, I always loved blocks. I always loved to come from the weak side when nobody see you and send it not to the stands. Send it to your man so you can start your fast break. Send it out, even though it looks good.
That season, he also became the only player in NBA history to record over 200 blocks and get over 150 steals, a testament to his unparalleled defensive versatility. His impact on both ends of the floor was so profound that he led the Jazz in 12 different statistical categories. I'm talking points, rebounds, steals, blocks, and even three-pointers made. His advanced stats were off the charts, with a box plus-minus of plus 7.9, ranking him among the league's absolute best. Kirilenko also introduced NBA fans to the ultra-rare 5x5 stat line, a game where a player records at least 5 points, 5 rebounds, 5 assists, 5 steals, and 5 blocks in the same game. This kind of performance was nearly unheard of, but Kirilenko made it look routine, pulling it off multiple times. Unfortunately, just as he was reaching his peak, injuries started to slow him down. In the 2006 season, he suffered a serious wrist injury, forcing him to miss nearly half the season. Even in limited action, he remained elite, still leading the NBA in blocks per game and earning NBA All-Defensive First-Team honors. But the injury marked the beginning of a troubling pattern in Kirilenko's high-energy style that made him more prone to injuries. And it was becoming clear that it was starting to take a toll on his body. By the 2007 season, the Jazz had restructured their roster, bringing in Carlos Boozer and Darren Williams as their new offensive focal points. This was a huge shift for Kirilenko, who had previously been the team's go-to player. Suddenly, his role was reduced. He was no longer getting the same offensive opportunities, and his shot attempts had dropped significantly. For a player who thrived on being involved in every aspect of the game, this change was frustrating. His numbers took a sharp dip as he averaged just 8.3 points per game, by far his lowest since his rookie season. In fact, it was lower than his rookie season. Defensively, he was still elite, but without a major offensive role, his confidence was starting to waver. Things came to a head during the playoffs when Kirilenko broke down in tears during a press conference, admitting how difficult it had been to adjusting to his reduced role. It was a rare moment of vulnerability in professional sports. Fans speculated about his future with the team as it seemed like he was no longer happy in Utah. At the same time off the court, Kirilenko developed a surprising distraction: World of Warcraft. Reports surfaced that he was spending hours gaming, which only fueled speculation that he had lost focus on basketball. While it's unclear how much of this actually affected his play, it added another layer to an already difficult situation. Kirilenko was still an elite defender and an incredibly valuable player, but the Jazz had moved in a different direction. He was no longer the face of the franchise. He was now a role player, and it was a role he never truly embraced. His best years was behind him, and the rest of his career would be spent trying to adjust to life as a supporting player rather than a superstar. Despite the frustrations, Kirilenko had already cemented his legacy as one of the most unique and impactful defenders in NBA history. The numbers, the accolades, and the sheer dominance during his prime made him a player unlike any other. By the time the 2007 NBA season reached the playoffs, Kirilenko was in a difficult position. The Jazz had transitioned into a new era with Darren Williams and Carlos Boozer emerging as the team's offensive centerpieces, leaving Kirilenko in a much reduced role. While he was still a defensive force, his offensive involvement had dropped significantly, and that took a toll on his confidence. Despite his struggles, the Jazz still put together a strong postseason run, making it all the way to the Western Conference Finals, a level of success that they hadn't seen since the days of Stockton and Malone. Kirilenko's role was far less prominent than in previous seasons, and it seemed like the coaching staff was unsure about how to utilize him effectively. He flashed moments of brilliance, especially on defense, where he still was an elite shot blocker and help defender, but offensively his role had diminished so much that sometimes he felt lost on the court. His minutes fluctuated throughout the playoffs, and in critical moments, he found himself being benched for long stretches. It was clear that head coach Jerry Sloan wasn't relying on him the way he once did. When the Jazz reached the Western Conference Finals, it was clear that they were outmatched. The veteran Spurs, led by Tim Duncan, Tony Parker, and Manu Ginobili, had too much firepower and discipline for the young Utah squad. The Jazz lost the series in 5 games, with Kirilenko struggling to make a consistent impact. His frustration was evident, and it became clear that he needed a different role to be effective. After the playoff run, Kirilenko and the Jazz faced an important decision. His days as the primary option on offense was over, but his defensive skills and versatility still made him valuable. The solution? Moving him to the bench where he could regain the defensive freedom that had made him so effective early in his career. At first, it seemed like a demotion. Going from franchise cornerstone to a bench player wasn't an easy adjustment, but over time, Kirilenko embraced the role. Coming off the bench meant he was no longer stuck in a rigid offensive system that limited his touches. Instead, he could play his natural game by defending multiple positions, creating turnovers, blocking shots, and making hustle plays that helped shift momentum. During this period, the Jazz remained a playoff caliber team, consistently winning 50-plus games per season. And while Williams and Boozer were the clear leaders, Kirilenko became one of the most valuable six-men in the league. He still played starter minutes, but now he had the flexibility to be a defensive disruptor rather than a secondary scoring option, and his numbers improved. And more importantly, his impact on the game became more noticeable again. He was once again making those game-changing defensive plays, leading the second unit with energy and showing why he was still an elite two-way player. Even though he wasn't an all-star anymore, he was a crucial part of the Jazz's continued playoff success. As Kirilenko entered the 2010-2011 season, things started to shift once again. Injuries began to take a toll, and he wasn't playing as many minutes as before. The Jazz went through coaching changes, and with Jerry Sloan stepping down mid-season, the team's identity completely changed. For Kirilenko, the season was frustrating. His minutes and production dropped once again, and for the first time in his career, it felt like his days in Utah were numbered. He was still a solid role player, but the injuries and reduced role made it clear that his prime years were far behind him. At the end of the season, his contract expired, and the Jazz decided to move on. After a decade in Utah, the team that drafted him was headed in a new direction. For Kirilenko, this meant returning to Europe for the first time since his teenage years. With the NBA lockout looming, Kirilenko decided to sign with the CSKA of Moscow, the team he had played for before joining the NBA. It was a perfect homecoming. He wasn't just another player, he was a superstar in European basketball. Kirilenko completely dominated the EuroLeague, winning the EuroLeague MVP and being named EuroLeague Best Defender. He led CSKA Moscow to the EuroLeague Finals, proving that he was still one of the most well-rounded players in the world. His numbers were incredible, and his impact on defense was even greater. And that is insane to me. In the NBA, he had an up-and-down role, barely getting minutes, and then as soon as he goes to the EuroLeague, he's winning the MVP, he's the best defender. It's insane sometimes. At the 2012 Summer Olympics, Kirilenko helped lead Russia to a bronze medal, the first Olympic medal for Russian basketball since the breakup of the Soviet Union. His leadership and versatility were on full display, and it was one of the most proudest moments of his career. After his MVP-winning season in Europe, Kirilenko decided to give the NBA another shot. In 2012, he signed with the Minnesota Timberwolves, returning to the league after a year away. In Minnesota, Kirilenko played well, averaging 12 points, 5 rebounds, and almost 2 steals per game. And he was a solid veteran presence, helping the young Timberwolves improve. But injuries kept him from staying on the court consistently, and after just one season, he declined his player option and became a free agent again. He then signed with the Brooklyn Nets, a move that kind of raised eyebrows because of the team's owner, Russian billionaire Mikhail Prokhorov. Many speculated that Kirilenko's contract was suspiciously low and that he might have received under-the-table payments. The NBA investigated but found no wrongdoing. Unfortunately, Kirilenko's time in Brooklyn was a disaster. He battled back injuries, played in just 45 games, and saw his production drop to career lows. It was clear that his NBA career was coming to an end. After leaving Brooklyn, Kirilenko was traded to the Philadelphia 76ers, but never played a game for them. He was soon waived, and at 34 years old, he returned back to CSKA Moscow for one final season, and he helped them win another championship, adding to his already legendary European career. But after the season, he knew it was time to walk away. In June of 2015, Andrei Kirilenko officially announced his retirement, ending one of the most unique and fascinating basketball careers of this era. Andrei Kirilenko wasn't just a force in the NBA. His impact stretched far beyond that. On the international stage, he was a leader for Team Russia, carrying them through some of their biggest victories. His ability to dominate both ends of the court made him one of the most decorated Russian basketball players in history. Kirilenko first made a name for himself internationally at the 1999 FIBA Under-19 World Cup, where he proved to be one of the most talented players in the world. Leading Russia's junior team, he showcased everything that would later define his game: versatility, defensive dominance, and high basketball IQ. His standout performances earned him the tournament MVP award, setting the stage for what would be an impressive international career. By the time he transitioned to the senior national team, Kirilenko was already viewed as Russia's next great basketball leader. He played in the 2000 Summer Olympics as a young rising star, but it was in the following years that he became the heart of the Russian squad. His defining moment came in 2007 when he led Russia to the EuroBasket championship, going up against some of Europe's best teams. Kirilenko was the driving force behind Russia's gold medal run. His combination of scoring, playmaking, rebounding, and defensive intensity made him unstoppable. He was rewarded with the EuroBasket MVP award, and that victory was a turning point, proving that Russia could compete at the highest level of European basketball. Kirilenko continued to be the backbone of Russia's national team, helping them secure a bronze medal at the EuroBasket 2011, but he wasn't done yet. In the 2012 Summer Olympics, he played a crucial role, leading Russia to its first ever Olympic basketball medal as an independent nation. Securing a bronze medal in London, his leadership, experience, and all-around game were essential in pushing Russia past some of the world's best teams. His international career was decorated with awards, including being named FIBA Europe Men's Basketball Player of the Year twice, further cementing his status as one of Europe's greatest players of his generation. Even after retiring from professional play, Kirilenko wasn't done with basketball. In 2015, he took on a new challenge, stepping into a leadership role as the president of the Russian Basketball Federation. It was a natural move for someone who has spent years representing his country at the highest levels of competition. His vision for Russian basketball was clear: developing young talent, improving the national team, and rebuilding Russia's basketball reputation. He focused on modernizing the country's basketball programs, increasing player development at the youth level, and pushing for greater international competition for Russian teams. Using his leadership, Russia continued to compete on the global stage, with young players benefiting from the foundation he was helping to build. His influence extended far beyond the court. He became a mentor for young Russian athletes, guiding them through transitions from leagues to professional basketball. In 2020, Kirilenko's leadership was recognized once again when he was re-elected as the president of the Russian Basketball Federation, proving that his contributions to the sport were far from over. While Andrei Kirilenko's NBA career might have not been filled with MVP trophies or multiple All-Star selections, his impact was undeniable. At his peak, he was one of the most unique and valuable two-way players in the league. During his best years, he was easily a top 15, top 20 player in the NBA, a true difference maker on both ends of the floor. He was an NBA All-Star in 2004, a three-time All-Defensive Team selection, and a key part of the Utah Jazz playoff run. But what set him apart was his versatility. He could defend multiple positions, make smart plays, and fill up the stat sheet in ways very few players could. If advanced analytics had been as popular back then as they are now, Kirilenko's defensive impact would have been even more appreciated. He wasn't just a solid defender. He was one of the league's best at his peak. His ability to block shots, steal the ball, and completely disrupt an opponent's offense made him an elite defensive weapon. However, he never fully embraced being a primary scorer, and that likely held him back from reaching true superstar status. He had all the tools to be a perennial all-star, but his offensive game wasn't built around creating shots for himself. Instead, he thrived in fast-paced, defensive-oriented systems where he can make plays without needing to dominate the ball. In the current NBA, positionless basketball and defensive versatilities are way more valuable than they ever have been, and Kirilenko would have fit in perfectly. Teams today prioritize long, switchable defenders who can guard multiple positions, and that was exactly what Kirilenko specialized in. He had the quickness to stay in front of the perimeter players and the length to contest shots inside, and the intelligence to make the right play. If he had played in an era that emphasized spacing and transition play, he could have had an even greater impact. For all his success, there will always be what-ifs surrounding Kirilenko's career. What if he had developed a more consistent three-point shot? What if he had been given a bigger role in Utah's offense? What if injuries hadn't slowed him down in his later years? At times, it seemed like Kirilenko was content on being a role player rather than pushing himself to be a true superstar. He was incredibly gifted, but he never seemed interested in being the focal point of a team. Some of his lack of motivation and superstar ambition led to his early decline. And while others argue that he simply wasn't given the right system to maximize his skill set, injuries also played a role in cutting his prime short. Had he stayed fully healthy, he could have been an elite defensive player for much longer instead of transitioning into a lesser role by his early 30s. Andrei Kirilenko may not have the same legacy as NBA legends like LeBron James or Kobe Bryant, but his impact on basketball is undeniable. He was one of the best defensive players of his generation, an international star, and a player whose versatility and high basketball IQ made him stand out. For basketball fans who appreciate defensive brilliance, hustle, and all-around impact, Andrei Kirilenko will always be one of the most fascinating and underrated players in NBA history. But what if I told you about a guy who was an NBA All-Star, won 2 NBA championships, and was once regarded as one of the NBA's best big men, just disappeared one day? If you want to know about what happened to Andrew Bynum, just click right here.